This is KOCO TV, Oklahoma City. This is 5 News at 10.
Good evening. A big fire tonight in Oklahoma City. People miles away could see it.
A motel under renovation along the I-44 service road east of Broadway Extension has been burning now for hours. 5 News reporter Jeff Mirasola is on the scene where firefighters are still mopping up. Jeff?
Jack and Jennifer, that's about all that's left of the Butterfield Inn. Primarily the outside shell of the building. The interior is burned out on the top, the roof is off, and it is still on fire. Now, we're right between the Cowboy Hall of Fame and the restaurant, the County Line. Patrons of the County Line must have thought the smoker got a little out of hand because the smoke was just blowing across 63rd Street. This was a fire that had all the right elements for a fire of this magnitude. The Butterfield Inn burned quickly and intensely for hours tonight. It's in the process of renovation, so it was primarily vacant. There were some people staying in rooms, but they weren't here tonight. Inside the large ballroom, paint cans, 13 rolls of carpet, new tables, chairs, and mattresses for the rooms. With the winds gusting up to 30 miles an hour, perfect conditions for a multi-alarm fire. The fire was contained to the main building, thanks to firefighters preventing it from spreading.
They took a tremendous beating over there. They hunkered down. The wind was blowing the heat and the smoke right down on top of them, but they stood their ground and saved that part of the building.
One firefighter, Major Danny Sellers, slipped on a wet stairway. He fell backwards on his air pack and injured his back. While co-workers comforted him, others continued the fight. This building was going to be reopened as a Ramada Inn. The new owners had already sunk about $600,000 into it. They expected to be open in about 2 weeks.
If we don't have any lives at stake, I look at it as just we're 6 months behind all of a sudden because it's just a project. But there's a lot of sweat and tears in that building and a lot of money.
When the smoke clears, they're looking at $1 million loss. Jack, Jennifer, you're looking at firefighters on the second floor. The fire is expected to burn all night. It's going from room to room now in the inner wall, and it just keeps spreading. So they're trying to save as much as they can, but the owners do plan to come back if they have to, just put the thing down to a slab and rebuild. A very intense fire where the first unit from 50th and Western could see the smoke. They have an arson investigation team on. They do that anytime there's a fire in a large building like this, especially one under renovation. Now, they do not suspect arson at this time, but they're going to look at that. They won't be able to get in until tomorrow, so we probably won't even have a cause of the fire for several days. One more housekeeping bit of information. Major Danny Sellers still at the hospital, hasn't made it into x-ray yet, but they just say he's in a lot of pain and probably bruised his back when he fell back on that air pack.
All right, thank you, Jeff. In other news tonight, summer fun quickly turned to tragedy for a teenager in Jones today. 17-year-old Lee Mitchell drowned reportedly after jumping into the Deep Fork River near Choctaw Road and Route 66. 5 News reporter Janet St. James says many people living near the area believe it's an accident that's been years in the making.
Friends console each other as medical examiners remove the body of 17-year-old Lee Mitchell from the Deep Fork riverbanks. About a dozen teenagers were swimming here when Mitchell reportedly dove in headfirst and disappeared.
They started hollering and said that they couldn't find Lee, thought he was playing around, so I wasn't too sure, and we all came running up and started checking in the coves and stuff, and we found him. I found him laying on bottom.
Friends say Mitchell was underwater at least 10 minutes before they began CPR, but medical examiners say Mitchell probably died from a broken neck suffered diving into shallow water. Graffiti on this bridge brags of kids daring jumps into the river. In fact, neighbors say this bridge is a problem every year, and they've just been waiting for a tragedy like this to happen.
As many as 50 or 60 at a time. And they're always jumping off the bridge and drinking and busting beer bottles all over the place. Looks like a city dump. I've cautioned them about jumping off the bridge because I was afraid something like this was going to happen.
Witnesses say the teens were not drinking when the accident happened, but officials say sober or not, it's never a good idea to swim in unfamiliar waters. Janet St. James, 5 News.
Lee Mitchell was going to be a senior next year in Jones, and Jones police tell us he was a talented football player who had a chance at a full scholarship in Nebraska.
A Tinker Air Force Base sergeant is charged with breaking military law relating to sexual abuse of minors. Nathan Glenn McInnes is now missing and could also be charged with desertion. The sex charges against him, 8 separate violations, including indecent acts with a child under the age of 16. If convicted, he faces a maximum of 80 years in prison, dishonorable discharge, and forfeiture of all pay. Well, the family of a former Alva minister stabbed to death in prison may file a lawsuit. Robert Bruce Brigden's attorney says the prison system failed to protect the inmate and says it's because of that negligence that Brigden is dead. But last month, Brigden reportedly chose to be released from protective custody into the general population at the Granite Prison, even though he'd been treated, or threatened rather, by other inmates. But Brigden's attorney says that does not make a difference, saying the prison is still responsible for an inmate's safety. Brigden's attorney says they'll make a decision on the lawsuit once they know who killed him. Well, the new developments tonight in the murder of O.J. Simpson's ex-wife.
Items that could link O.J. Simpson to the murder, and Dean Blevins joins us with the latest. Dean?
Tough story. Murder is a shocking tragedy, and it becomes even more shocking when a possible suspect is one of America's sporting heroes. Today, not a good day for O.J. Simpson. Speculation mounted this morning as members of a crime lab team reportedly found a blood-soaked glove at Simpson's home. They also discovered drops of reddish-brown liquid on his driveway, and they confiscated a pair of tennis shoes. For more than a day now, reporters have been stalked outside Simpson's L.A. house. His attorney came by, as well as friends and former teammates.
Just want to come by, and he's my friend, been friends for 25 years.
But there was no sign of O.J. Simpson as the investigation continues into the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman.
Oh, I'm shocked and mortified. It's very hard to believe because he's such a gentleman and such a very mellow person.
The spotlight is nothing new for O.J. Simpson, but this time it's being focused on him for reasons far from what he's best known for.
Long turns, hands to Simpson.
A superstar running back at USC, his glorious speed and grace a thing of beauty, he won the Heisman Trophy in 1968. The Buffalo Bills drafted him in the first round of the '69 draft. 4 years later, the Juice set the single-season rushing record, 2,003 yards. Finished his career as the second leading rusher in NFL history and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. He became a spokesman for Hertz Rent-A-Car and also acted in several movies. His relationship with ex-wife Nicole was stormy at times, resulting in divorce in 1992, 3 years after pleading no contest to wife-beating. While Simpson was interviewed extensively by the police Monday, his attorney insisted O.J. has nothing to do with the murders. Simpson has been an immensely popular man, and all of America wants to know one thing: did O.J. do it? Today's autopsy of the murder victims showed they died of multiple stab wounds, and there has been no shortage of rumor from L.A. to Oklahoma City. The police are about to pick up O.J. O.J. has confessed. O.J. is going to confess. None of that has happened.
It's just an awful story all the way around.
Yeah, a nightmare from start to we're not to the finish yet.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. An Enid teenager will be tried as an adult in the murder of his parents. The defense phase of 16-year-old Donnie Moreland's preliminary hearing wrapped up today. Moreland's friends and police officers testified for the prosecution. Police say Moreland shot his parents in the head 3 times. They had apparently been arguing just before the shooting. A special district judge bound Moreland over on 2 counts of first-degree murder. He will be formally charged in July. Investigators are hoping a large reward will buy them some clues in the disappearance of a man last week. Lawrence Imbro has been missing for more than a week now. Police believe he may be a victim of foul play. The car he was driving was allegedly stolen from him, used in a rape, and then abandoned. Crime Stoppers is now offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to Imbro's whereabouts. The phone number, 235-7300.
Oklahoma City police have arrested a second man they say was a customer of a teenage prostitution ring. Investigators say 36-year-old Mark Nicholson was a customer of a 15-year-old prostitute. That alleged call girl is shown here walking on the left. Nicholson was arrested on a complaint of second-degree rape, and in addition, police say he videotaped his encounter with the girl. So far, 5 people have been arrested in this case. More arrests are expected. Metro area voters cast ballots today in a number of important local elections. Among the highlights, Mustang residents overwhelmingly rejected a pay raise for city council members. Proposition 5 would have given council members $100 a month and the mayor up to $500. Park improvements have gotten the nod in Norman. Voters have approved a 1/3 of a cent sales tax increase that'll fund building baseball fields and more at Reeves and Griffin parks. Dutch Schneider has defeated Betty Hayden in Del City's city council race. The former Oklahoma City highway patrolman says he'll work to reduce crime by hiring more police officers. And Midwest City voters have approved renewing an Oklahoma natural gas franchise agreement. However, officials say the renewal may mean Midwest City residents may see a slight increase in their gas bills. Much more still to come. North Korea makes a major announcement about nuclear arms today.
A musician who delighted folks for decades loses his battle with cancer.
A rude awakening for a homeowner in Colorado.
And the wind may really bug us at times, but it caused some real problems tonight. A graphic protest in Altoona, Iowa tops news from around the nation.
Meat is murder! Stop blood for profit! Meat is murder! Stop blood for profit!
An animal rights group, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, staged a mock slaughter outside a Turkey Federation meeting. The group claims turkeys suffer a horrible death. One person dressed as a turkey was doused with red paint and others pretended to cut her. One person was arrested. The Turkey Federation says many of those allegations are simply not true. And on Lookout Mountain, Colorado, home video captured a surprising sight. A man living here woke up and found what you're looking at, 2 mountain lions sniffing around his backyard. He was about to put his dog outside when he saw the big cats. He thinks they were after deer that frequently make visits to his house. After a little while, the mountain lions eventually wandered off.
Turning to international news, North Korea is withdrawing from the International Atomic Energy Agency. That agency is the nuclear watchdog of the UN. The North Korean ambassador to the U.S. made that announcement today and criticized South Korea for lobbying for sanctions against the North.
I think it will not contribute any way for the solution of the problem. Rather, will make very complicated to the situation on the Korean Peninsula. South Koreans should be blamed for the consequences of such a situation.
But South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are pledging to continue trying to pressure the North into allowing inspections of all its nuclear facilities. Within the past few days, I called South Korea and talked to a Baptist missionary who has also worked in Oklahoma. James Hampton is now serving in the South Korean city of Busan.
As you watch the American television, you think that we're going to be at war next week. And that's just not the general consensus of feeling over here. You can scream wolf so many years until people get kind of desensitized to this type of thing.
But isn't there some extra apprehension over the idea that the North might now have nuclear weapons?
That is a little bit more concern now, of course, yes. The missiles that they've got, too, are another concern.
Hampton and his wife, Barbara, will be leaving South Korea for an 8-month furlough starting later this week. They plan to spend part of their time off in Ardmore.
Congressional hearings on Whitewater should begin July 29th. Senate members voted along party lines today as they decided to begin narrowly focused hearings. Republicans wanted a broader inquiry. The hearings will probe the meetings between Clinton administration officials and banking regulators, and they'll also look into the death of White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster. He handled some Whitewater matters for the president, but the hearings will not go into the land investment deal known as Whitewater. The hearings will not begin until Special Counsel Robert Fisk completes his criminal probe of those transactions. Well, if you've gone to the movies, you've certainly heard music composed by Henry Mancini. The 4-time Oscar winner died today of cancer complications. He was 70. It was just a few months ago that Mancini was presented a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. His body of work included 90 albums and the scores for such films and television productions as Charade, Darling Lily, The Days of Wine and Roses, and the Pink Panther theme. Breakfast at Tiffany's featured one of Mancini's greatest hits, Moon River.
Wider than a mile.
Mancini received many awards over the years, 4 Oscars, 20 Grammys, 2 Emmys. He worked right up until his death on a stage version of Victor Victoria, one of the movies that won him an Oscar. We'll be right back. If you were outside for any amount of time today, you had to notice the wind. The linemen for Oklahoma Gas and Electric sure did. They had their hands full earlier tonight when a downed power line knocked out service to about 1,300 customers. That was in the area around May and Hefner Road. And when it gets hot, the lines get soft and they sag. So if the wind picks up like it did today, the lines cross and they short out. OG&E had the problem fixed in about 45 minutes.
Probably had an impact. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying you could see from the video there how much the wind was moving. It was crazy.
And probably had an impact in that fire tonight, too, I would think. That kind
I think
of
it'd have
wind feeding the flames.
Yeah.
Now all we have to do is see if we can fix the wind problem. I think we got a couple of days for that. I was telling Jennifer and Jack something real interesting earlier. You know, it was as hot in Fairbanks, Alaska today as it was here. 90
Pretty
degrees
unusual.
this afternoon. They rarely get to 90 degrees there in the interior portions of Alaska. Let's take a look outside and see what we have. Winds are starting to die down some. They're not at 38 miles an hour like we had this afternoon here in the city. They're at 20 miles an hour right now. Temperatures at 79 degrees, mostly clear skies. The humidity's at 64%. Pressure's at 29, 86 inches and rising. 79 right now here in the city. And at McAllister are the coolest readings. The rest of the state pretty well still in the 80s, 86 at Enid. Out in the western portion of the state, especially around Gage, winds are still kicking up to near 40 miles an hour, and they will continue for the next day or so. Down to our south and east, some cloud activity, some showers in Texas. Some of this cloudiness and Gulf moisture has moved up to the extreme southeastern portion of the state. Some of it could pick up some shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow afternoon. I don't think it'll make it into central Oklahoma. Pretty strong cold front up to our north. It is not moving south, but take a look at the temperatures. Behind it, 60s this afternoon. Ahead of it, very hot readings. As we go back east, Baltimore record, Philadelphia record, Columbus, Ohio, Muskegon, Michigan, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Denver for the second day in a row, 99 for record. The hottest in the country, Laughlin, Nevada, near Las Vegas, 113 degrees. We will continue with strong southerly winds as this cold front moves to the east of us, and with it bringing the cooler temperatures. Still this evening, you can see very warm temperatures in the northern plains, middle 80s to upper 80s. In fact, this is the first pretty widespread activity of record high temperatures and summer weather. By tomorrow afternoon, the front moves a little bit farther east, but stays well to the north of Oklahoma. We'll continue with this trough out west, so strong southerly winds continue. Once this front moves on by, though, tomorrow afternoon, things calm down for Thursday, and then it's just plain hot and dry for the next several days. Here's the forecast. Increasing clouds with that Gulf moisture coming in. Not as windy. Winds overnight should be in the 10 to 20 mile an hour range. Morning clouds around, but then mostly sunny skies by midday. A hot high of 91 degrees and windy once again. Thursday, not quite as windy, but still fairly breezy out there, and we will start getting downright hot this weekend, getting into the upper 90s to near 100 by Sunday.
Can hardly wait.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Ross.
Between the Knicks and Rangers, New York's had a lot of championship hopes alive.
That's right, and the New York City people want the New York Rangers to win more than they want the Knickerbockers to win. Could the Rangers stay in town? If they lose, they'll be run out of the Big Apple. We'll tell you next in sports.
All right, let's find out if the Rangers did it.
A huge, huge game. It was billed as clearly the highest profile game in the history of the National Hockey League. Game 7, Stanley Cup playoffs. Long shot Vancouver had never won the Cup, and you have to go back to 1940 for the last New York Rangers championship season. And so we did, 1940. Days of black and white and not a player with a helmet. Well, let's fast forward to some color action and a tremendous game tonight. Brian Leach gives the Rangers a 1-0 lead. Canucks come back, shorthanded. Trevor Linden breaks in, cutting the Rangers' lead to 2-1. Then the Rangers' leader comes up big. Mark Messier scores on the deflection, and that's the difference. Rangers win their first cup in 40 years, 3-2. And they celebrated that night back in 1940, and you can bet the Big Apple crowd is celebrating right now as we speak. Rangers fans are breathing a sigh of relief. The curse is over, and the cup goes to the New York Rangers. Brian Leach voted the MVP. Major League owners put a collective bargaining agreement on the table, proposing to the players a salary cap in exchange for a 50-50 split of revenue and the elimination of salary arbitration. Players expected to resist, and a strike a strong possibility. But there's action tonight, Seattle and Texas. Looks like this guy's going to miss some of it, though, and some good stuff. Tino Martinez with the shot to center. David Hulse on the run, and he will get there. And then a junior highlight, Ken Griffey Jr., you know what he does best. He goes deep, his 27th. That's the league-leading number 27. And let's go to the scoreboard. They play long ball games. They're still in the 7th inning. Rangers losing this one 6-4. Elsewhere, Oakland over Chicago. California in a low-scoring game, 1-0 over Kansas City. Detroit leading Milwaukee. The Yankees win again in Baltimore. Cleveland wins at home against Toronto. And Minnesota beats Boston 5-4. In the National League, Houston over San Francisco. The Expos beats Pittsburgh 12-7. Philadelphia over New York. Atlanta over Colorado. Florida beats St. Louis 7-0. Los Angeles leading Cincinnati early. First game without Sundberg. Chicago winning in the 5th. And a grand slam has beaten the 89ers 13-0 tonight in Louisville. Most of us have played a game of pocket billiards, or pool as it is sometimes called. Joanne Mason Parker played for her first game at the age of 4. 22 years later, she's among the very best, and Myron Patton has more.
Joanne Mason Parker is a professional billiards player, and she's good. In fact, she's ranked as one of the top 4 players in the world. She's won a number of tournaments in her 8 years as a pro. Like a lot of pro competitions, there's pressure involved. But unlike most others, this game has a better payoff for women.
You make more as a female in this sport, believe it or not, and I think it's got a lot to do with you guys, because it seems you guys like to watch women play better than men. So as far as the ratings are concerned on ESPN and stuff like that, the women's matches get super duper ratings. They find the women a little bit more marketable right now. I talk a lot when I play, but not really to my opponent, but to the crowd and stuff, because that pumps me up, and it may affect my opponent, but that's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make myself play as good as I can play, and as well as that's the important thing for me.
Joanne was at the Brickyard Brewery tonight for an exhibition. She showed she's not only a good player, but a good teacher. She had me believing I could become a player. But she ended our game just like she does her others, making the last shot and wrapping up another win. Myron Patton, 5 Sports.
Myron has talent. At 26, Joanne is the youngest player in the top ranks. Let's go to briefly where former OU basketball assistant Mike Newell named head coach of the new CBA Shreveport franchise. John Lucas takes over as the general manager and head coach of the 76ers, and as 5 Sports earlier reported, Blazer Bruce Shoebottom's trial delayed probably until the fall.
All right. Thank you, Dean.
Still ahead, we'll tell you how Jetliner gave a woman a skylight free of charge.
One of Channel 5's 5 Who Care winners has been honored with a national award. In our nation's capital, Oklahoma Senator Don Nichols presented Linda Babb of Norman with the Jefferson Award. This award salutes people who volunteer in their community. Babb spends time with battered and neglected kids and helps adoptive children find caring homes. Kids attending activities this summer at metro area libraries are getting some added fun.
All right already, so he's a very good swimmer. But he's still the ugliest thing I ever saw.
These are the Lucky Penny Players in their version of the Ugly Duckling. We caught up with them today at the Midwest City Library. This theatrical group is making stops all summer at area libraries.
In San Jose, California, it's the case of the mystery pliers. You see, Ann Robardo was watching television just like she does every night. When she heard a loud noise, she looked up and noticed a hole in her ceiling. Upon close investigation, she found a pair of 10-inch long pliers wedged in her metal roof. Where did they come from? The local consensus is that they fell from an airplane. You see, Ann's home is directly in the flight path of the airport. Regardless where the pliers came from, the neighbors are now keeping a close eye on the planes. Hope those pliers weren't needed for anything in that airplane.
Yeah, better pliers than an engine, I guess, on your house.
Right.
We'll be back.
NBA championship down to the wire.
That is right. They continue tomorrow in New York, and U.S. Open golf begins on Thursday, Ron.
Looks like hot, dry, and windy for the next several days.
Good night.
Good night.